This is Bree, and today I am here with Jordan JP Charisma. Jordan is an avid pollinator and butterfly gardener and knows so much about native plants, invasive species, and just working with the environment instead of doing harm to the environment. So I'm here today to talk to Jordan about all things nature. And Jordan, I would love to just have you introduce yourself really briefly.
Hi guys, so it's Jordan or JP. You also might see me as Black Butterfly Man on TikTok. Like she said, I do a lot of work with native plants and, pollinator gardening. More specifically, more in Florida. So I know a lot about plants and the ginormous amount of invasives we have here. So, I really like to, shed spotlight on all those things.
Amazing. I'm so excited to talk to you about this. And I know that initially our social media manager, Lauren, had come across your TikTok and she was like, oh my gosh, he's incredible. He knows so much and he's so passionate about it. We have to talk to him. So, love that we found you through social media and a platform like TikTok too. So, obviously, we'll touch on that at some point as well. But I wanted to open up the conversation and just have you tell me about your background and like when were you first introduced to nature and like how did you first get into like exploring the outdoors?
So for me, I was always in tune with nature because around me I have at least three different, parks and preserves. So I see wildlife all the time. It's always in my backyard, and I've always loved animals. So it's just something that's always been a thing for me.
Have you always been in Florida too? Were you born and raised there?
I was raised here, but I was born in Virginia. So I
Okay,
just say I'm from Tampa.
sure. Okay, but continue.
I think this kind of leads into one of the questions you had earlier, talking about like what kind of got me started into this. So as a child, I actually used to be interested in raising monarch butterflies and stuff like that as a kid. And I said one day, like before I die, like a bucket list, I'm gonna raise butterflies. And it just kind of happened during COVID. Like I remember I was walking my dog and I noticed the Florida State butterfly, which is the zebra longwing, and I'm wondering in my head, I'm like, why don't I know this butterfly's host plant? Like,
Mm,
because I knew when I was a kid that the monarch butterfly needs milkweed as a host plant. So, like, walking around, in my neighborhood, just like watching everything, just taking everything in, and then just being like, wow, like, how come I don't know these things? Like, how come no one has been able to, teach me all these things about, butterflies? And, sometimes when I make my videos, it's like I'm that person that I wanted to teach
mm.
me about these things.
I love that. I want to even go back to as a kid, like what first struck your interest in butterflies and like seeing native plants, like even you saying like I knew that milkweed was something that a butterfly needed as a kid. Like what instilled that interest in you or that curiosity, I guess?
Honestly, like growing up and kind of backtracking and seeing the things that I was good at was science. So
Mhm.
I always, loved animals in a sense. Like, um, the picture's not behind me, but like I literally went to like when as a kid, like I was obsessed with the idea of going to Discovery Cove, where like
Mm.
you could literally interact with dolphins and animals, and there's like a whole reef and snorkeling and stuff like that. So I always loved animals. So for me, doing this, it seems like I'm kind of doing like a greater good,
Mm.
understanding all the native plants, kind of realizing the things that we're destroying in nature as we're continuing to expand.
Yeah. And is it something that, from an early age was getting outdoors and kind of like exploring different kinds of plants and things, something that like your family members were really into, or was that something that just it was completely you and then you kind of did you bring them into it and teach them, or was it something that yeah, like that you just got curious and you were just like I want to take the initiative to know this for myself and you were just kind of paving the way for yourself.
I mean, I would say, yeah, it's more so about myself
Mm-hmm.
because, but it's a little bit of both. So my mom loves gardening, but
Mm-hmm.
she doesn't know the things that I know about native plants and, what they do for nature.
Mm-hmm.
And my family, we always used to go on like runs all the time, like in the morning and stuff. And so, I mean, it's kind of like I had these things that introduced me to nature, and then I kind of did my own thing with it.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I feel like that's such a distinctive quality for a kid too, just to say like, you know what, this is something that, maybe isn't necessarily provided to me, but I'm going to do what I can to teach myself and like take the initiative to learn
Hmm.
all of this on my own. And I think
I
that
think
that
I do remember at one point that at my school they did raise monarch butterflies, and I thought it was cool. So
yeah.
I think, but I do remember even before then I was at like a butterfly house in, because at one point we were in like Washington State or something like that. So it did intrigue me because I think it was like a science trip or something like that,
Hmm.
and like the butterfly conservatory was a part of it. But I literally don't remember anything but the butterfly conservatory.
Okay.
So
I love
I
that.
guess I literally don't remember anything else. So
So does it stem, do you also love like other kinds of insects and take as deep of an interest in them, or is it mostly primarily butterflies and like their native plants?
I love animals in general, but the way that I am, I really like to be very detailed and very
Hmm.
thorough in whatever it is that I'm passionate about. So I do love animals, but I right now I'm more focused on butterflies
Okay.
because like it's such a deep amount of knowledge you can learn about them, and learning about all the different host plants, learning about what kinds of areas these butterflies like to live in,
Mm.
like the ecology of every single butterfly. And it's just kind of hard to, step out of that and try to expand, because then I lose a ton of, knowledge on like Lepidoptera.
Okay.
Like I do love all other insects, and I do want to, eventually shed more spotlight on other animals that need attention. But
Hmm.
for now, I'm just on butterflies.
Yeah, I mean, I respect that so much of just saying like, hey, I want to do this one thing, like do it so well, know all the ins and outs and all the intricacies, and like become an expert in that area, basically. So I
Hmm.
love that. I think it's so interesting to just hear you have this like specific passion and you're just going for it. It's
It's
amazing.
it's crazy because like I've noticed that, with my TikToks and stuff like that, and I always say this all the time to people. It's like, I introduce them to butterflies, and then it expands way greater than that, because, first, like, butterflies, they're beautiful and they're
Hmm.
gonna grab your attention. So when I make these videos on TikTok and stuff like that, I know it's gonna, gravitate, people of all different ages to my
Hmm.
videos, and it's something that a lot of people can relate to. And I really make these videos because like I really want to get them started on understanding, what native plants are, how
Hmm.
crucial they are to our ecosystem, and if they expand, like, awesome. But like if they stick with butterflies, you're still helping a whole ton of insects that, use caterpillars as a source of food, use those nectar plants that butterflies use as nectar plants. A lot of these animals share the same plants.
Hmm.
So regardless if they're staying with butterflies or, they want to expand, like that's just like what I try to do.
I love that. And you're right. It's like a gateway, right? We're aesthetic by nature. Humans are
Hmm.
drawn to visuals, something beautiful, and then being able to utilize that to teach something powerful that's going to take care of nature and take care of the planet and take care of animals is like it's using that tool, which social media is controversially good and bad, like we can use
Hmm.
it for good things and we can use it for toxic or negative things. And I feel like
Hmm.
using it in this way to like educate and promote just knowledge, having people pay more attention to things that they've probably never even thought of before is so
Hmm.
valuable. And it's something that I think we should be utilizing more. Utilizing
Hmm.
TikTok or Instagram as a tool to captivate and then educate, which is
Yes.
amazing. Yeah. So
Hmm.
with that, it sounds like butterflies were the entry point, and then you started learning more about like native species versus invasive species. Would you say that's correct?
It is correct because it's crazy because some invasive species, people will use them as like a host plant for
Hmm.
a certain butterfly because they can use it. And once I expanded on that, and then I understood why invasive species are so crucial to remove. That's when I was like, whoa, like this is way bigger than butterflies. Like this is, destroying entire ecosystems, creating an imbalance, not allowing, more biodiversity
Hmm.
in wildlife. So once I started like kind of learning about these plants that were host plants but were also invasive, that's when I was like, whoa, like we need to do something.
Yeah, and I think that's something I've noticed here because I'm based in Arizona, and we see, I mean, most things here, a lot of things are not native to
Hmm.
Arizona. And so you see a tree or you see a plant, you're like, oh, that's so beautiful. And it's like, wait, but does it actually belong here? Like, what is the cost of having this beautiful plant that now becomes invasive? Like, we have a huge issue right now. It's a certain kind of like a brush plant, and that
Hmm.
is what is igniting buffalo grass. So buffalo
Hmm.
grass is becoming a huge issue for us here with wildfires. So it is
Mm.
very brittle, and it's one of the first things to catch fire, and it goes like crazy. So a lot of people don't know that that is, it's here, and it looks kind of like a long cattail almost.
Hmm.
So some people are like, oh, it's kind of pretty, but then it's actually super dangerous to us, especially in the summer months. And then, once
Hmm.
it spreads its seed, it's just everywhere. So I would
Mm.
love for you just to talk about, you were starting to kind of dive into like, oh, once I realized like, it could be a host plant, but it's invasive and it's really dangerous. So what was the first thing that you looked up, or like what was the first thing you learned in that capacity? And then like I would love for you to just kind of delve into like why an invasive species is dangerous.
Okay, so I think the first thing we need to do is like tell people what an invasive species is. So basically, an invasive species can be a plant or an animal that has been brought into an ecosystem that it's not native to
Mm-hmm.
and it's harming it. So, for instance, in Florida, like the number one category one invasive species is the Brazilian pepper. This tree, it's so awful because it literally like it has ginormous copious amounts of berries on it, and the birds they eat them and spread them.
Mm-hmm.
But when they're doing that, those birds are actually being harmed by those berries because they're not accustomed to the toxins in those berries, and if they continuously eat them, it will hurt them.
Hmm.
But anyways, these trees literally grow everywhere. Like it is so hard to manage these trees because of these berries and how the birds always spread them all over the place. And
Mm-hmm.
these trees are choking out all of our native plants and causing biodiversity to just plummet simply off of one tree because this one tree is capable of destroying thousands upon thousands of acres like
Hmm.
once it's introduced. And
That's
the state of Florida has spent over millions of dollars trying to remove this tree, and we still are fighting it.
do you know the history of like how it got introduced there at all?
Well, like you said, like a lot of these people, they see these invasive species that they think are pretty, and then they bring them here, not realizing the consequences of their actions. So,
Mm-hmm.
this tree, I don't know exactly how long ago, but it was many, many years ago, and they brought it here, and we're still fighting it to this day.
So mind blowing, especially when you do start to kind of learn about invasive species,
Hmm.
and just what you might think is, this lovely plant. And then you start to learn more and you're like, wow, this kills like so many other things that I enjoy,
Hmm.
or, it takes up so much water, it's taking up so many resources, it's hurting animals. And people just don't really think about it because it's a plant and it's probably
Hmm.
fine, but really it's not. Do you like how many invasive species? 'Cause you said that Florida has quite a few. Do you know how many the state of Florida is like dealing with, or maybe your area specifically?
It's too many to count. I would have to research because they're just like I can just go on the internet and just type in invasive species, and we could be talking about invasive species for an entire lecture for like 3 years because there's
Yeah,
just so many here because we live in a tropical area and so many different things can live here because of our climate.
yeah. Do you want to touch base on the difference between native, invasive, and then non-invasive? Because I know that there is, a non-invasive plant that maybe isn't native, but it's not doing anything harmful either. So, do you have any examples of that in your area, or like what
Well,
that
I mean,
is?
in my own garden, I have things that aren't native but are like Florida friendly. So, for instance, like Jatropha, it's an amazing nectar source. So many different butterflies and bees and stuff can use it. It blooms year round. It's like it can get the size of a tree, or you can keep it like a shrub. It has these like nice, pretty red flowers. Pentas are also cool. Like they don't encroach anything like that. They have these pretty blooms. They're short. If you just want like a quick little flower in your garden or something like that, you could definitely add it. I don't have a problem with, people, doing research is like
Mhm.
critical. That is what people need to do because like they'll like we said, they'll see something pretty and they're like, I gotta have it. But like
Mhm.
they need to think about the longevity of what that plant is going to do to their ecosystem. And one of the I think it's homegrown nature. So homegrown nature, they always talk about how they do about like 30% like it can be non-native as long as it's friendly, and 70% native, and it makes a huge difference in a garden setting for nature.
I love that guideline too because I just feel like it's so important even
It's by
people.
Doug Tallamy. He does a lot of work with them, and I get a lot of my knowledge and stuff from them as well.
Amazing.
Mhm.
Yeah, I feel like even taking even the smallest amount of time to just pay attention and look up like what are native species to my area? What is native to
Mhm.
my region? What's going to benefit, insects and animals in my area instead of hindering or hurting them? I feel like
Mhm.
researching and just taking that step is so valuable because if you go to a nursery and you're looking at plants, you are just like, oh, well, it's here at this nursery, so it must be fine. But really, they're just going to get whatever they think people want. And a lot of the
Mhm.
time, that includes things that are invasive or dangerous to native plants and native animals.
Mhm.
That was something that once I moved out here and I was just paying attention to, like different kinds of cacti, different kinds of plants, I would go to a nursery and be like, wait, but it's here. Like, why is that here if it's not something that should be here? It really confused me, I guess, that that's like just offered because they know that people will buy it because they want it.
Mhm.
Hmm.
I think it's you could say it's kind of selfish in a sense to think like that because I mean I get it. You think it's really pretty and you like
Hmm.
it and you're like, oh, I gotta have it. But like the more you learn and the less you're ignorant, then you start to be like, wow, like how is this plant benefiting wildlife? Because what like I still battle with my mom about what plants we should keep and get rid of because she sees it as like something that's very sentimental to her or something beautiful, and I see it as this thing does not benefit nature whatsoever. Why
Hmm.
do we have it? We need to get rid of it.
Yeah, and I think that that just kind of is the undertone for most things when it comes to us and how we relate and are interacting and in relationship with nature is like the minute that you just pay attention and you like become a little more selfless and you're trying to do what's best for the environment, best for the planet, like just in harmony with everything,
Hmm.
then you're doing things differently because you're paying attention more and like you're taking time to invest in something that's outside of yourself when
Yes.
yeah, like when a lot of the time, until you get to that point, you're just doing what feels good for you and not having to think about anything outside of yourself.
And people are, oh my goodness, that can relate to so many different things. But
Hmm.
speaking about that, it's like for me, I actually work at a native nursery, so I get
Love
a lot of
that.
my knowledge, just working there, like on the
Hmm.
job. Like I learned so much because at our nursery, should I talk about the nursery or should I just like
You
glimpse it?
can, yeah, for sure.
Okay, so I work at Little Red Wagon Native Nursery in Tampa, Florida, and
Hmm.
a lot of what we do is we talk to a lot of people who are just getting started into
Yeah,
a butterfly garden, and we teach them so much information about native plants, invasive plants, and it's just a fun environment to be in because I'm constantly learning things every single day.
yeah.
It's awesome to me to see people come in there. They're trying to start their butterfly garden. They don't know what it is that they want to do, and I'm there to help them steer them in the right direction.
I love that. And yeah, even just taking the opportunity to be a beginner at something and saying like I don't know, but I want to do the right thing. Like I'm not
Hmm.
sure what the next step is supposed to be, but I at least want to try. I feel like that's the beauty of just like being humble and saying like, yeah, I have no idea where to start. I feel like there's tons of
Hmm.
information. It can be overwhelming, but I know
Hmm.
I want to do my part to like take care of the planet in some capacity, so this is where I want to go and just
Hmm.
having that resource there like now it makes me I'm sure we have native garden nurseries here but I don't know one so I'm like after this I'm going to go look it up and see if we have like a solely native nursery, because
Hmm.
that's an amazing thing to offer. Um, and a great resource, obviously. Like you even
Hmm.
saying, like, yeah, people come in and ask tons of questions. Like most of our stuff isn't even about selling the plants; it's about educating on why it's important.
Yes, that is a huge thing about what we do. We also have like a nonprofit organization as well, and a lot of our proceeds go to
Oh
conservation work.
shoot. Okay, so what I love is the fact that people are coming in and they're starting their journey to learn more. And primarily, your job at the nursery is just teaching people and giving them more information, which I think is so special and unique for what you're doing.
Yes, for sure. Because, I had the struggle of trying to figure out all of this and, being able to help someone, start their journey is amazing to me. And it just brings me joy because, not a lot of people have these opportunities or are willing to, do this. So for me to be the one to, give them, that push to start, their native butterfly garden or, start learning about wildlife and stuff, it's awesome.
What are the most commonly asked questions? Like, do you see a theme of most commonly asked questions or like things that beginners want to know first and foremost? Like, if I were to come in, what would you anticipate would be the beginner questions that you would get?
Well, for beginners, a lot of times they want to know what a native plant is, and I always have to tell them, a native plant is a plant that naturally occurs within a region. And that's like the first thing I have to tell them. Or they'll wonder, like, oh, like, what's a host plant? What's a nectar plant? And I'll have to tell them that, like, a host plant is a plant that the butterfly lays its eggs on for the larval to feed on. And a nectar plant is what the butterfly, which is the adult form, is what they feed on. So there's this liquid substance in flowers that they call nectar that provides nutrients for the butterflies.
I love that. So, could you give me an example of a host plant and then also a nectar plant?
So, like how we discussed earlier, milkweed is a host plant to the monarch butterfly. And I want to be more specific and say you want to plant native milkweeds because it's been proven time and time again when you start to introduce the non native varieties, specifically tropical milkweed, scientific name Asclepias curasophica. It harbors this parasite that harms the monarch butterfly species as well as other butterflies in the wanderer
Wow.
family. And when you plant that non native variety, so tropical milkweed, Asclepias curasophica, if you plant it in your yard, especially in, subtropical areas like Texas or Florida or anything like that that doesn't get harsh winters, it harbors, the parasite. It ends up basically declining the monarch population because of all the health effects that happens when OE is in a high number.
That is so interesting, especially because, I'm sure there are
Mhm.
people that are like, oh, I'm doing the right thing. I'm getting milkweed. It's like, it's the
Mhm.
pollinator for this insect. And then it's actually really dangerous if you get the wrong kind. So there's so much to learn and
Mhm.
so many like little intricacies.
I can use so many butterflies as examples as to why it's important to be
Yeah.
native and why it's important to, save wildlife. For instance, I talk about the zebra swallowtail a lot of the times as a great example because their host plant is in the Azamina family, which is basically, like soursop, pawpaw, which is their native host plant here. And in order to propagate that plant, it takes a really long time. The plant takes many, many, many years before it gets to the
Hmm.
adult form to even form fruit because it uses majority of its time to, expand its long taproot. And the chances of having a successful propagation is only through seed, and that's very, very low. So for us to, destroy, their host plant, we could potentially endanger this butterfly because of how hard it is to, keep their host plant available for them.
I feel like I'm learning so much right now. This is amazing. Thank you so much for just sharing so much insight and helping us think even deeper beyond like I could think I'm doing the right thing, but then it's actually harmful or if it's in the wrong season or there's just so many little intricacies of learning how to garden and be mindful in the right way. And it's fascinating because you think, I mean, at least to me, it's like, oh, like flowers and plants, like it should be easy. And it's like, no, this actually is really challenging because we've introduced so many things that don't belong where they are.
Yeah, it can be challenging and it can be overwhelming, especially when I'm talking to people. I've had to learn, over time to kind of just simplify it for them, or I'll just ask them like, "Hey, like, can I just like have creative control and just like show you what's going to work here?" Cuz different plants like different conditions and stuff like that. And I already know, what plants will like to live in certain areas, and I just have to ask them a bunch of questions so I can help them out and stuff.
Yeah, and I know even beyond plants that you're very passionate about just the things that negatively impact nature and plant life. So I didn't know if there was anything you wanted to expand on in that capacity of just talking about things that are, negatively impactful to nature that we should be paying more attention to, or things that, are very near and dear to your heart, and like what you're learning and things that you want more people to be aware of.
For me, I think the main thing is like it can be kind of controversial, but I'll just
Sure.
get into it anyway. So for me, like you're called Keep Nature Wild, right? I really try to encourage people to, keep nature wild. A lot of the times people are obsessed with the idea of trying to save the monarch butterfly, and they think that raising, all these monarch butterflies is going to save them when it's not. A lot of the times these people don't even understand what OE is and what that parasite is. So, they're raising all these butterflies and they could be releasing ones that have a high percentage of OE, which are going to affect the monarch population. And they're also not taking account for, not every caterpillar is supposed to make it out there. And when you're bringing all of them in, you are potentially, inducing inbreeding and other, health side effects when you rear that many butterflies. So for me, I feel like we need to bring more awareness into, doing more habitat restoration, making sure we're expanding this animal's range because that's what got us here in the first
I
place.
think that's a great point. And, there is a lot to be said about, nature has its own cycle of life and its own way of handling situations to say, like, this is healthy and this isn't healthy, this is sustainable, this isn't sustainable. And what really has been the problem is like us coming into it and being the middleman, right? Like nature has its own ability
Mm-hmm.
to cycle through what it needs to. So I think that's a very fair point of
Mm-hmm.
saying, like even when we try to insert ourselves and quote unquote do good when we think we're doing the right thing, it potentially isn't the right thing still.
Yes. I mean, I do rear butterflies, but literally for educational
hmm
purposes to, shed spotlight on that butterfly, show what its host plant is, Like I know that people love watching the butterflies and stuff
hmm
like that. So I literally rear butterflies for the sole purpose of education, and I hope eventually I can finally just, have a butterfly garden and
Yeah,
enjoy it.
yeah, but I think it's so valuable too to, like we were saying earlier, like that aesthetic value, that tangible value of like seeing a butterfly in person or seeing the butterflies on, social media and like interacting with them. It provokes people to care more, I think. Like if you yeah,
It
yeah, I
does.
think it just adds that the reality of it, like, oh, it's in front of me, I can see it. We're so tangible as humans that we need to see it. We need to have some kind of connection to care about something, which is tough. Like, I wish it wasn't like that. I
Mhm.
wish we could just say, oh, this is the right thing to do, so we should do this thing. But we need to have some sort of tie to it to make it, something that we want to champion and get behind most of the time.
Yes. I mean, people do
hmm
learn differently, so I guess I can understand it in a sense of, they need to visually see it because not everyone is gonna be able to learn just because you tell them something. They need something to expand off of.
And I would love to know, like, in your mind, what the most valuable lesson or thing you've learned so far is from, like, your focus on gardening and learning all of the things that you have so far about butterflies and, like, native species. Like, what is nature teaching you?
It's definitely taught me about patience and thinking about the longevity of things in life because for instance, I'll buy this plant and if I didn't research it, if I just planted it somewhere, it could completely overgrow a space
Mhm.
or be in an area like in the long term. It won't be something that I wanted. But if I would have thought about the longevity of that plant and how it's going to be in the end result, I wouldn't have, got myself in that situation. So I think that can relate to a lot of things. And, patience and following through. So for instance, like the pawpaw, that plant takes forever to grow, but the longevity of it is this plant is going to be super beautiful, and as long as I make sure that this plant is in an area that will let it grow and thrive, I'll finally get that end result that I want. And I feel like with that in life, there's many things that you could do, like working out and making sure you're continuously working out to get those results that
Hmm.
you want and staying through with it.
The persistence of it all. Yeah. And I think
Mhm.
we're a society that's now used to instant gratification. So being able to go back to a time of like, oh, patience and like nurturing something and, seeing it grow and putting in effort to like watch it thrive is so rewarding in a different way and helps us get back in
Mhm.
touch with the fact that, not everything happens immediately. And, it is valuable to be able to take a step back, go at a slower pace and reap the benefits over time instead of just right that second, which is beautiful.
Mhm.
And I think correlates really well
Mhm.
to, when we're talking about this day and age with social media and stuff too. Like we have access to limitless information and things at our fingertips. We can order food to our front doors. We can do all of this stuff in like a snap of our fingers. But being in a space with, plants and gardening, it demands that you take a step back and you don't get those results that way.
Regardless if you buy like an oversized plant or
Yes.
not. Because the plants, they want their roots to be happy and established. So when you plant it, like even if it's like something large, you have to make sure you nurture that thing so that way it can live there sustainably eventually.
Yeah, and I mean, even the plants I have here, like I'll be like, oh, this one, they told me that it survives very easily. It would be very hard to kill it, and then something happens, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I do wrong? Like, why is this leaf turning yellow? Why is this, why is it bending over? It looks like it's not getting enough water, or it looks like it's getting too much water. I feel like it just makes you pay
Mhm.
attention in different ways when we start to invest our time and energy into raising and nurturing other things that they can't tell us what's going on. You have to learn how to pay attention to the surroundings and like what it's trying to tell you based off of like its cues as a plant, which is so interesting and I think valuable
Mhm.
to make us do deductive reasoning in a different way outside of, I guess, like societal norms
Mhm.
these days.
And another thing for, getting people into gardening and stuff is for me, it's like very therapeutic to, to just be outside in general and to have, this safe space where I come home from work and I just get to enjoy my garden and watch, all these beautiful living things, live in my garden with me is just so
That's so
rewarding.
beautiful.
And like being able to like help other people, create a safe space that they love and enjoy is like awesome
Mm.
to me.
I love that so much. And I feel like that, okay, I want to transition into talking too about TikTok and like how all of this has played into this, because obviously that's how we found you and discovered what you were doing and took
Mhm.
interest in wanting to have you come on and talk to us about all of this in the first place. So you said that during the pandemic is really when you started to cultivate and get more interested in, having your own butterfly garden and anything else like that. So do you want to expand on that and just tell me the timeline? Like walk me through how this all came to be.
Oh my goodness. So, like, kind of like I said in the beginning, I was kind of just walking my dog, trying to figure out, what the host plants were for the zebra longwing. I was kind of doing my research. I saw some neighbors had some signs in their yard talking about, native plants. Like, I didn't know what it really
Hmm.
was more so. And then, like, I was in, like, a lot of, like, generally speaking, when I'm into something, like, I specifically kind of am on social media and
Hmm.
I get into groups and stuff, and I kind of hear things from other people. Then I kind of expand my knowledge by going on Google to, like, double check if what they're saying is true. And, like, it just was a snowball effect. Ever since I started walking my dog and seeing these butterflies in nature is, like, when the ball got
Love that.
rolling for me.
Okay, so we
Hmm.
formed TikTok, or was that later?
So the thing is with me is I've always been on social media. So I've been making content about automotive
Okay.
content for a long time. And I love how you brought up the point about, the instant gratification and we have all this knowledge at our fingertips and we're trying to figure out what it is that we have to do to like
Hmm.
get what we want. And when I was making automotive content, I was trying so hard to see how to make my channel the most successful and I completely like failed at it. But while I was doing that, I learned so much about
Mm.
what works on social media, what doesn't work on social media, what it is that I have to do in order to, have a successful social media account. But the one thing that I learned about TikTok is, being my true authentic self on TikTok and, providing these, knowledgeable videos about nature and wildlife and just, sharing my personality with the world is why I kind of stuck with TikTok, because a lot of the other social media platforms, it's not like that. Like the people on other social media platforms, they don't really
Mm.
have that
Hmm.
connection with you as
Okay.
people do on TikTok.
So, when did you create your first video? And like what has been the most successful? Like what do you feel like is, I'm assuming, like the purpose for your TikTok, like as it's been growing, are you like, yes, this is something that I want to do?
I'm gonna go ahead and so this I think we're reaching a year right now from my TikTok account actually. So
Congratulations.
thank you for that. Yeah, so literally when I first started, I was like, I'm gonna make videos about butterflies, and then the video that showed me what was working for me was just me being
Yeah.
my true authentic self. Literally, as soon as I stopped,
Hmm.
planning everything out, like trying like super super duper hard to, make this be like the
Yeah.
best video possible, and like I was looking at all the little things. Like once I stopped looking at all the little things and I started just, kind of just doing it, that is when I finally got that one successful video that reached like I think it was like
Amazing.
300,000 views. And so I saw what was working. I saw, what the pattern was, and I put that in my other videos, and that's what started
I
working for
love
me.
that. And you've just been reaching so many people since then. Do you get, I'm really not that great at TikTok, so this is going to sound really elder millennial of me, I'm sure. But it like, do you get a lot of people that are reaching out to you through TikTok for like more information, more education? Like what is that relationship like with the interaction on there?
Well, with the interaction, I've noticed people, they just think I'm cool, I guess.
You are cool.
That's the only way I can explain it. So like people will say like I'm a thorough or like a fairy or like a pixie, like stuff like that. Or like the weird comments would be like people who are afraid of butterflies, but then they watch my
Ah,
videos and it makes them calm and it makes
okay.
them see butterflies in a different light. Those are like the two main things that like make my videos. But when it comes to like the educational aspects, I'll answer some questions, but some questions are, like I said, I like to keep nature wild, and they'll be asking me questions about doing
Okay.
things that aren't, and that's not
Yeah,
why I
that's
created
super
my page
fair.
in the first
And
place.
honestly, that's the space too where it's like, you have to still protect your energy and like do the things that bring you joy instead of, going down different rabbit holes with social media because it
Mm-hmm.
can be hard to kind of like find a boundary or a line of like, what do I interact with? What do I not interact with? Like, do I give people access to me constantly or no?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I totally agree with that because, if you give the wrong person access to you, it can be a wrong turn of events.
For sure, for sure. And it's one of those things too, like, yes, you create content and you are like a face on there now, but it's still like, I
Mm-hmm.
am a real human. I need my own space. Like, it can be very tough to say, like, oh, this is where I draw the line of saying break or like, I can't respond to these things because
Mm-hmm.
it can be very overwhelming to have a lot of eyes or attention on stuff that you're doing too, or pressure, I
I
suppose.
just hit delete and block. That's
Good for
that's
you.
what you have to do.
Good for you. I would love to know too, like, have you connected with other like gardeners, other butterfly gardeners, other ecologists, like things like that? Is that a kind like is there a space for that on there, or like what does that look like?
I would say there is, but there isn't. I mean, I've been going through a lot recently, and I
Hmm.
haven't really taken the time to, outreach some of these people. I am trying to now, but
Hmm.
yeah, there definitely is a space for it. There's definitely people out there that are doing the same thing as me. Well, not the same, but similar.
Hmm.
And, we want to do collaborative videos and stuff like that. So there are people out there, but I would say the world that I'm in is very niche.
Okay. Do you feel like there is like representation too of like, black men, black people that are like out in the agricultural or gardening space that are like, I don't know, like showing up in community of, kind of like what you said in the beginning, being the person that you wish that you had been able to ask questions to when you were younger? Or do you feel like you're kind of paving the way in that aspect?
I would say when it comes to the industry, I'm definitely paving the wave
Hmm. Hmm.
because a lot of the people in the industry are, older Caucasian people
Hmm.
that, they don't have the same views as me and we cannot relate to things in the same passion.
Yeah.
And I haven't really met anybody in the industry, working where I work or, going to events. I haven't really seen anybody that looks like me. It's literally like me and then like maybe like one or two people on the occasion
Okay.
that looks like me. But the only thing that I could say that is in the industry that relates to me is like the LGBT community. So
Yeah.
I have met a couple of members in the LGBTQ community, and I would say that they're pretty open-minded individuals in this industry that I'm
Hmm.
in.
Does it
Very
feel
welcoming.
Yeah, yeah. Does it feel like a challenge ever that you do have, like you said, like differences in views or like how you relate to the, I guess, like the nature of what you're doing in a different way? Does it feel like a roadblock, or does it feel like an opportunity that you have to kind of be that voice, be that face?
I would say it depends on the individual because the
Mm-hmm.
way that the space is, it's like you're either hardcore, keep nature wild,
Mm-hmm.
or you're either like the opposite. Like it's like
Mm-hmm.
two polar opposites. It's kind of hard to find someone like me that's kind of like in between that, they want, certain aspects to be kept wild while other aspects not so much.
Yeah, that's super fair, especially with your, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like your purpose and passion in it is to like educate and inspire others to at least start the process. So instead of being like hardcore, like this is the only way, I feel like you are in the stance of like, well, the more people we can get to even think about this is better than like no one thinking about it. And like,
Yes.
yeah. So I feel like you're like welcoming everyone to the table, like, hey, like I just want to plant this seed with you instead of being like, well, there's only one seed to plant, and if you don't do it this way, then there's like no space for it at all.
I don't like that mentality at all because like that just doesn't sound inviting.
Yeah.
I've dealt with that firsthand. It just seems like they're judging you and it doesn't seem
Hmm.
like they care to see your point of view, and that's just not the kind of energy I like to be surrounded by or would want to give to somebody else.
Yeah, and I feel like the only way that I mean, this kind of can translate into anything, I think, in the conservation and outdoor space. I think it's just planting the seed and trying to relate to people on their level and like get them involved in a way that makes them feel, that pang of like, of connection and wanting to do a little bit, even to start, instead of like having to dive head first and be like all in at start. I've
Mhm.
seen that a lot, even with, our mission is to pick up litter outdoors. And I think that, we've even started with a challenge of being like, hey, just go pick up 3 pieces of trash and like just start there. You don't have to go out and like, pick up 20 pounds or, something that seems almost unattainable to someone who's never done it before. But
Mhm.
if you're starting and you just do the small thing and then you take another small step and another small step, then look, like you're doing the environmental things, like you are making a positive impact, and it can start very small. Even with the
Mhm.
research of like looking at native plants, like it can start so small and then just build over time. I feel like we should all be doing things imperfectly, and then we'll have like thousands of people doing it imperfectly, but at least they're trying.
Yeah, by the way, it was Homegrown National Park that I was talking about with Doug Tallamy. And
Oh,
like you
perfect.
said, like how you're talking about, these small initiatives, it's
Hmm.
crazy. I'm like not trying to like necessarily give them promotion, but because I enjoy their mission and how their mission literally relates to what you're saying and
Yeah.
what I believe in as well. It's like their mission is literally to start at the house,
Yes.
and then like we could literally, if everybody, I don't remember exactly how many it said, but basically if everybody, planted a native plant in their yard, like we would
Mm.
have like a way larger conservation mark of amount of land for animals and wildlife if we just did that.
That's
And,
mind blowing.
taking that step kind of expands into, looking at the bigger picture and expanding from not just your house that you can relate to, but
Hmm.
also, caring about nature and other aspects in other areas of the world.
I love that. It's so true. Yeah, we start with where we're at and then you slowly just kind of build out. And then, I mean, from there too, it's like, how many people can you inspire? How many people can you touch to start thinking about these things in different ways too, which is exactly what you're doing through the content you're creating, you know? Like that's so
Mm-hmm.
inspiring to just see like how many touch points you potentially have that are like planting that seeds with people to think a little bit more, a little bit further, ask
Mm-hmm.
questions, you know, start the scientific process of starting to say like, I wonder what this would do if I planted this thing, or maybe I shouldn't buy this because I don't think it's native to here. Like just starting to
Mm-hmm.
ask questions and think about something outside of ourselves.
Yes, indeed, indeed. It's like we said, it's just a lot to process, and we have to take those baby steps
Hmm.
and not be so critical of each other and know that, we're all very similar in ways, but we just have to give everyone their time to shine and just understand where they're coming from rather than to just like push them away or make them not feel good about their point of view.
That is a great, I feel like I want to like clap, but that is a great point to make. And I feel like a beautiful point to end on too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I feel like the future of, you know, any of these initiatives is finding common ground, learning how to work with one another and with our outdoor spaces. We're all supposed to be in community, all of us entirely,
Mm-hmm.
plants and everything. I have a few wrap up questions for you before I let you go. So the
Mm-hmm.
first one is, where can people find you online?
So you can find me online on pretty much anything as long as you put at JP Charisma. So it is JPCHARISMA. So JP Charisma on all social media platforms.
Love it, and highly recommend everyone go and check out his TikTok videos. They are incredible, they're beautiful, they're educational, they're fun, all the things. That's how we found him, and we're so thrilled, obviously, to talk with you, Jordan, and just learn more because you
Mm-hmm.
are so passionate and you have so much knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And the last question I have is, what does keeping nature wild mean to you?
Keeping nature wild to me means, letting nature be nature, not letting, trash, clutter, anything that isn't supposed to be in wildlife interfere with it or, stop it from continually thriving.
I love that. That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with me and sharing so much valuable information. I have no doubt that we are inspiring some new people to probably check out your TikTok and also start to look into butterfly gardening on their own, and hopefully starting to consider, you know, what are the differences between native and invasive species in my area. So thank you so
Mm-hmm.
much for taking the time.
You're welcome anytime. I love talking with you and I love the way that you articulate things. Like, it's awesome.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this was such a pleasure. I'm really excited for everybody to hear this.
Me too. But yeah, that was
Yeah.
amazing.
All right. We'll talk soon.